The scripts writers write for themselves are often the most confiding. Bestie, the reason that you're unhappy with your author career is because you're doing something you don't want to do. Amazon is not the only game in town. Hello, shameless writers. I'm Kristen McTiernan, the nonsense-free editor here for your twice monthly, I don't know, dose of writing and publishing wisdom. And today we are going to be talking about apparently the unseen elephant in the room. When I published my video on men aren't reading anymore, and then the follow-up with all of the comments that came in from that video, a lot of the men who commented on it were like, what are you talking about, Kristen? Men are still reading. They're just not going to Barnes and Noble. Okay, we're not pressed. We don't care. We're not upset that the shelves are full of flowers and crowns and questionable non-human creatures that apparently are rife for the straddling. They don't care because they're not there, but they're still reading. So what are they reading? Despite being an editor for the better part of 20 years, and I mean full-time, this is my job. This is my full-time job. There were 2 full-time editing jobs going on at the same time. Now there's just one. So that's a relief. But in all of that time, I never had a client who introduced me to the concept of web novels. Now, to be clear, I knew, we all know about Wattpad, but nobody likes it. Even the people who write on Wattpad and even the people who read Wattpad, mostly young, mostly female, mostly fan fiction oriented, they don't exactly like crow about it though, do they? They're not like, excuse me, I want everyone to know I am a Wattpad contributor. Like, no one is bragging about that except in very niche communities. And for a lot of people, they think that's all web novels are. It's just the next iteration of fan fiction. But that's not true. Today on Substack, I released an article about web novels. And while I was doing the research on that, I was gobsmacked by the numbers. When you look at novels that are released serially, chapter by chapter on platforms like, yes, Wattpad, Royal Road, and Web Novel. This was a $34 billion business, and that was in 2023. It's gone up by 15% since then. Now, if you want to talk about growth, and we're looking at the number of books published on Amazon every day. It's something obscene, like 11,000. Okay, there's millions of them. And those numbers were like before AI. I think those are 2022 numbers. I don't even want to guess what the number of new books on the Zon are recently. I don't even want to think about it. And a lot of authors don't because it's upsetting. How are you supposed to stand out? How are you supposed to build an audience? How are you supposed to even get your book in front of anybody if there's 11,000, 15,000, 20,000 new books dropping on that one site every single day? Well, the answer is marketing and building a small but faithful community. We've talked about that on this site. It is a thing that people do. They do it successfully. Some of my own clients have managed to break out. Last week's interview with B.R. Keed, which was awesome, by the way, you should watch it. This guy is an introvert. He doesn't do TikTok dances. He isn't even really active on Twitter. He doesn't need to be. He built a small but mighty mailing list, and his books are really good. And so word spread like wildfire, and his launch strategy was very effective. So please don't take this full-throated endorsement of web novels as to say that traditional books are dead and you shouldn't even bother. That's not what we're doing here. What we are doing here is talking about how web novels, which are, as the title implies, novels written specifically to be read on a screen. Sometimes the browser screen, sometimes people enjoy that, but more often than not, web novels take into account a mobile-first experience. Now, I have 2 different Substacks. On one of them, it's the one that I usually refer you to. It's called Fictional Influence. I publish commentary, nonfiction. I don't publish fiction over there. The other one, Serial Journeys, is where I have been posting chapters of my novels. It's been quiet for a long time. But what I found when I posted chapters of my traditional novels that would at some point be published on Amazon, people would open it, people would read about half. But what I found is that because they were reading it on the Substack app, on their mobile device, it started getting really, I guess tiring would be a good word, maybe boring. Was it my writing? Were they bored by the fact that my chapter just wasn't very good? Possibly, not gonna lie, but more than likely, a 2,000 to 3,500 word chapter is just too long for a mobile reading experience. When we're talking about web novels, it's not a difference in story. There are ways to play with format. You can have like interactive, gamified web novels or whatever, but I'm talking about just text only. And sites like Royal Road, sites like Inkitt, and even sites like Patreon, which honestly has the lion's share of very successful, profitable web novel authors. The reason that they're profitable is because they are writing for the specific purpose and understanding that their reader will be reading on a screen, probably a mobile one. As such, they design it differently than they would if they figured that their reader would be reading on an e-reader or in a traditional book. I've talked about how much I hate blue light. I really do. I love e-ink devices, but not everybody does. When you're talking about the web novel reader, it's probably someone who does not want to carry an additional device with them. They just want to whip out their phone and read for a short amount of time. Part of the reason that web novels kind of have certain authors and certain readers looking down their nose is because there's an association with web novels and the TikTok-ification of our attention spans, which what I've learned is simply not true. Now, like a lot of writers, when I went to college many, many eons ago, I majored in literature. Yes, I am the English literature major girly. And like many of you, I was forced to read Uncle Tom's Cabin in my American Lit class. So I actually had to take 4 separate American Lit classes. That's fine. I'm American. We should know our own literature. But what I found out there is that Uncle Tom's Cabin, to this day feted as one of the most important works of American literature, was originally produced as a serial. So if you, like me, were forced to read that damnable tome, you know that the reason it's such a slog to get through is because it's so repetitive. It's repetitive because it was released as a serial. And good old Harriet Beecher Stowe knew that the average person at that time who did not have a cell phone, who did not have TikTok, she didn't expect them to retain all of the little minute information that they had read a couple weeks ago, a month ago. She didn't expect them to retain that. It was released as a serial, and she changed the way she wrote specifically for that format. That's what she did then. That's what we're doing now. So the sneering that goes on with web novels, oh, that's just the TikTok of writing. That's not true, and it never was. But the biggest reason, more so than the mobile-first reader experience, more so than the saturation on Amazon, the reason people are turning to web novels, both as a writer and as a reader, is because they're frustrated with what is going on in traditional publishing. And by traditional publishing, in this instance, I mean just writing a book and publishing it in ebook and paperback format. People are getting stuck with books full of filler, even if it's an otherwise good book. People are finding the tropification of a genre that they normally like, where things are just weirdly inserted into the book because they want to hit that trope. They're trying to market to those specific tropes. And of course, as we've discussed extensively on this channel, men aren't being catered to in the way that they like stories to be told, or even the way they like love stories to be told. The way they consume is very different. The way they feel is very different. And that is not being addressed at all, even by the indie market. But web novels are. And the great thing about web novels is because they're released serially, because they're released on websites, it also has that community factor where you can leave a comment on every individual chapter. Hey man, I love this. I'm so excited about XYZ. Or I had an idea about this. Like, I bet this is the way the mystery is going to end. That would be so annoying, like if they were right. But it's like, it's a really good community aspect. And if we're being honest, and as an editor, I feel empowered to say this, a lot of writers who get into writing, that's what they want. And I think I mentioned this in one of my previous videos where I was talking about like the art of writing, where you're not interested in profit. You're interested in community. You want people to read your book and you want people to respond to your book. You want to have that, I guess you could call it a dopamine hit. You want to talk about your writing. You want to write, you want to talk about it, and then you want to keep writing. Publishing a novel doesn't really feed into that because it feels like you're just throwing it into a void. Will the person who bought your book, thank you for that purchase, will they read it? Will they read all of it? Will they read it in any time soon? Are they going to read it next year after you've moved on to the next book? You don't know. But the immediacy and the community of web novels is part of the reason why it's growing like wildfire. Now, I mentioned Patreon, which of course is a paid patronage site. I don't use Patreon. I use Substack. And I mentioned earlier that I have had a long dormant fiction Substack. It's called Serial Journeys, and I decided to do something a little bit different with that site. Instead of releasing long 2,500, 3,000 word chapters of my work in progress of a traditional novel, I wrote something specifically for Substack. I wrote a web novel. The Twitter Crush is a serial thriller, one written in an epistolary style. Only in this case, it's not just letters. It's written in tweets. It's written basically in a case file, a murder case file, detailing all manner of crimes and the evidence collected in investigating those crimes, which includes tweets, DMs, blog posts, YouTube video transcripts, giving you insight into the characters. And most importantly, it's all short. It is designed for people who are online and are a part of social media, who are a part of the internet world and like to consume on the internet. It's built for people who like to read on their phone, or even if it's not their preferred, it's not going to make them tired to read these short chapters. It's also built, and this was important for me, for a male audience. My previous works, though I wouldn't exactly call them woman-centric, they did appeal more to females. This one was written specifically for the fact that I have a huge male following and a much smaller female following, and that female following tends to be more like me and less more so like the TikTok girly pop bookstagram person, we'll say, which is a good thing because I kind of make fun of that manner of woman in the book. Jackson Reed has built an empire ghostwriting bestsellers for the women's empowerment industry. Known only by his social media handle, He for She Writes, he's the queen maker behind today's feminist superstars, crafting manifestos he secretly hates while enjoying an endless stream of admirers. But then his latest clients' critics start disappearing. It begins after their book launch and an unexpected night together. But when podcasters and YouTubers who question Irina Sterling's background vanish without a trace, Jackson realizes he knows nothing about the woman he spent 6 months interviewing. Drawing on his skills from his military past, Jackson starts investigating the disappearances, searching for Irina's true identity. But the deeper he digs, the clearer it becomes. Irina is not who she says she is. And maybe Jackson isn't either. Caught between exposing the truth and protecting his lucrative career, Jackson faces impossible choices. If he remains silent, more men might disappear. And he might be next. The Twitter Crush is available on my Substack, and it is free for the first 7 days after release. After that, each chapter goes behind a paywall. It's on a 10-week schedule, which means you follow for 10 weeks, you get 4 chapters per week, and then the book is done. And like all good web novels, instead of requiring you to pay for the investment right up front, you can read for free, assuming you get in the first 7 days after it's posted. You can also, if you want to support my work, become a paid subscriber or leave something in the tip jar. But that's up to you. Most web novels are designed to be consumed for free on a tipping system. Patreon might be slightly different, especially now that they've moved to where you have to subscribe monthly rather than per submission. I've included a link below if you would like to read the first 4 chapters of The Twitter Crush, and I recommend you subscribe for free or paid if you want to be notified when new chapters are available. Now, for everybody else, do you read web novels? Do you write web novels? I would love to hear your experience on especially whether these sites are user-friendly for the writer. Is Inkitt better than Royal Road? If you are one of the few who write on Wattpad who are willing to say so, please let me know what that experience is like for you. I would love to hear it. Because writing isn't just one thing. It's whatever we want it to be and whatever the reader wants to consume. So why constrict yourself to a model that isn't serving you? Don't do that. Find out what serves you. If traditional novels are, continue doing that. But if you want to try something different, maybe come down the road that I have and see how that works for you too, because there's a lot of different options to see what hits. So that's all that I have for you for this week. Until next week, take care and write well.